So we're finishing Galatians today. So last chapter. So are you all well? Are you all safe? And have you got everything you need? We're all here. If you need anything, you need to talk to us. Don't hesitate to just call if you need us, or message us in some way. Tell us how you're doing. Have a chat. Just have a little talk. So we are here. So we're going to look at Galatians chapter 6, and we can then move on to something else. I enjoy Galatians. It's one of my favourite little letters. It's compact. It's got everything in it. And we're going to look at the chapter 6 of this. So let's start, shall we? Father, we thank you, Lord Jesus, that you're going to help us with this. Give us revelation in this book. Help us, affect us and change us and make us more like you. So chapter 6, let's read the first few verses. Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks of himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one examine his own work, and then he will have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another. For each one shall bear his own load. Now remember that last week we started. You can look at Galatians, there's 6 chapters, and they're in pairs. There's the first 2 chapters, the second 2 chapters, the last 2 chapters. The first 2 chapters covers Paul defending himself, and he reminding the people that God has done it. That he's given account of everything he did, he's defending what he said, and he is showing the personal attack on him was to take away the gospel on them. The second 2 chapters, where Paul then starts teaching through the Old Testament, through the law, through the covenant, through the work of the disciples, through the understanding of the scriptures, that this is the plan of God all along. That this isn't a plan B, isn't a second plan. This was the plan. That the Gentiles receive everything God had by faith. That we can receive salvation by faith. That everything Abraham was promised is ours by faith. That we are heirs with Christ. We are joint heirs with him. And we are not illegitimate, we're not brought in, we're not outsiders, but we are really responding because we are belonging to him. And in these last 2 chapters, chapter 5 and chapter 6, he's bringing it together and making a conclusion. And now we are finally in the last chapter, and he's reminding people of the purpose, how we are to act and to live. See, being a Christian, following Jesus, changes our way. If you've got the correct gospel, if you have had the gospel into your life that says, look, I can't do anything. My sin is in the way. But if I ask Jesus into my life, who took away my sin, I am now entering into the kingdom of God. I'm entering into all the promises of God. But if I start thinking that I've got to do something, I've got to follow the law, I've got to follow some covenant, then I've missed the gospel. The gospel is the free gift of God, who promotes me into his acceptable position, promotes me to look like his son, promotes me to be in the right place. That's amazing, isn't it? So now he's reminding people how we are to live. See, in one of the passages we just read, he says, you shouldn't think yourself of something when you're nothing. The whole purpose of this is that you come along each other. We have to fulfill the law of Christ. What was the law of Christ? That you should love one another. That we are to love one another and to build each other. So if somebody's fallen in sin, if somebody falls away, if somebody has a problem, then restore him in gentleness. But remember, you're not superior to him because you didn't fall into that sin, because you've got to be watchful that you don't fall into that sin. So it's all about the way we respond to each other. The gospel isn't a competition. In this church, in this Galatian church, they were very competitive, trying to be out-spiritualize themselves by being better than others. So if they got circumcised, they thought they were better. But it's not a competition. The competition is that we outlove one another. We build each other. We bear one another's burdens. When one falls, we restore them. When one has a problem, we pick them up. We don't look over them and thinking, well, you failed because you're not as spiritual as me. We build each other up. We fulfill the law of Christ. And we are not to be deceived in thinking that our spirituality is more than others. We live in a church setting where we have a pastor and a congregation. But the reality of that is the way the church was started, and the correct way is that you have an eldership of people who look after other people. Leadership is a person who serves others. It is not a person who controls or builds or has oversight in a sense of controlling others. It builds. We build and we pick up people who have fallen. We gather people who are suffering. We gather people who are sad. We make sure that the gospel is being already done. I'm having problems with my phone, my thing. I could press on. Am I still on? Yeah. So I'm just checking I'm still on, okay. These little signs coming up, but my storage is getting a bit full. Yeah. So here we are, that the gospel is about the way we relate to each other. Isn't it one about pulling down or affecting, but really building up and sharing with each other. It goes on to say in the next passage, beyond verse 6, let him who is taught the word share in all good things with him who teaches. See, there's no rank. There's no upper part or lower part. We are here to share in with each other. We are here all together. We received it from Christ. He paid for it. I didn't pay for it. You didn't pay for it. He paid for it. And we've accepted it. And from that position that he humbles us to acknowledge that we are saved by his grace. There's nothing else we can do. There's no improvement we can make. We can't compare ourselves to somebody else. We are saved by grace. So whether you're being taught by somebody or whether you're teaching, you have no outrank of another person. You don't outweigh or a better class or reached a better level. You're not better than anyone else. That we've all received it by Christ's sacrifice on that tree. We received it through his God act of coming to earth and changing our life. Verse 7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, and he will also reap. For if he sows to the flesh, will of the flesh reap corruption. But he who sows to the Spirit will also reap everlasting life. Let us not grow weary while doing good. For in the due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially those who are of the household of faith. So what he's talking about here is that our attitude. If our attitude is flesh, if our attitude is promotion, ambition, if our attitude is one of getting bigger and getting more spiritual and being lord over other people, then we're going to reap corruption. If we think that if our studies are better than somebody else's, or our work is better than somebody else's, our calling is higher than theirs, then we are already going into what? The flesh and corruption. See, mustn't be weary of doing good. That is, we have to build each other up. We have to pick each other up. We're not in competition with each other, but we are trying to include everybody. The love we have for one another, where we try and reach them and bring them out there. And then he says this, especially the household of faith. So we are, as a body, we do this to everybody. We do this to all people. We are trying to reach everybody and show the love of Christ to everybody. But when it comes to God's people, those who have received the gospel, there's a special bond. There's a special network. There's a special way of helping each other. There's a special way of picking each other up and causing people to know who God is.
It's gone.